Hello and welcome. We are going to get started in just another minute or so. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to Sage Intacct Planning Academy for the general services industry. My name is Sal Catalano, and I am a senior solutions consultant. Welcome. Today, we're going to be starting off with giving you a little bit of a brief overview of Sage Intacct Planning. We'll talk about financial planning and analysis, which is where the tool takes budgeting to the next level. And then we'll go into a demo. And I do have a few colleagues that will be monitoring the chat and questions. So please feel free to ask your questions and we'll do our best to get them responded to during the webinar. Okay. My motto has always been, if we live, we plan. With Sage Intacct Planning, you have the tool that'll help you get started quickly. So Sage Intacct Planning is a cloud-based planning solution that eliminates the reliance on uncontrolled, inflexible, unsecure spreadsheets and replaces them with real-time single source of truth for agile and confident decision-making. A lot of our customers are using this to streamline their annual planning process and complement that with monthly forecasting, have access to what-if scenarios at their fingertips, create driver-based plans with details that can go down to the employee level, and then all the while get access to the reporting and analysis and being connected to the Sage Intacct core financials. Our core features revolve around being able to save you a lot of time, to be agile, and allow you to move quickly to make changes as your company grows or simply respond to any market changes. For example, as a general services organization, you may want to provide a new service. Imagine how easy it would be to create a scenario that includes the revenues for that new service and provide you with information on, let's say, staffing requirements or other resources. Or, and the other side of it is, what if there's a risk? You can simply create a scenario and see in real time how those changes will affect your budget. Another core feature is that you can always trust the numbers. You can feel confident that the numbers are rolling up correctly without having to worry about whether or not there are any mistakes in your formula of your Excel document. In my professional life, my prior professional life, I should say, I spent over a decade in the finance department of various industries. And I must admit that I sometimes used to spend more time putting and checking my formulas than I did actually creating the budgets. It happened only once where my formulas became corrupted because I shared a budget with a department head and he inadvertently changed something that threw off all of my calculations. It was a nightmare. I think most of you can relate on how you guard your Excel spreadsheets. My favorite feature is to be able to collaborate in real time with directors, department heads, and other budget stakeholders. Imagine having the right people access Sage Intacct Planning and make changes, provide supporting details, roll up those numbers to the appropriate categories, and then take those numbers and bring them back into your general ledger for budget to actual analysis. I remember my finance team used to spend a couple of hours a week communicating with other department heads and managers to provide them with budget to actual balances when this data can be available through a dashboard. Sage Intacct Planning is easy to use, whether your stakeholders have a strong financial background or not. They can participate and be responsible for how they run their budgets. These features will truly take the accountant role and elevate it to a more proactive approach to financial planning and analysis. You're no longer working on your budget only during budget season. With Sage Intacct Planning, you can devote a few hours a month and be ready to make changes quickly and easily. When we think about what sets Sage Intacct Planning apart from other planning software, we lead with these 4 items: self-discoverable, connected, powerful, and collaborative. What we mean by self-discoverable is the ease of setup and use. Typical planning and budgeting users want a tool that is easy to deploy. The intuitive and user-friendly tools are designed to be fully managed by the finance end user with no need for IT or admins to ever get involved. The connected item speaks to the user-friendly planning wizard, which provides intelligent mapping and syncs with your Sage Intacct core financials. If your organization does not have a dedicated financial planning and analysis resource, these functions are being carried out by the controller and finance managers. The bidirectional integration between Sage Intacct Planning and Sage Intacct core financials means that you can make a change to a scenario in planning and quickly and easily merge that scenario back into Sage Intacct core. The powerful driver-based modeling, what-if scenarios, and rolling forecasts let you see the impact of your decisions immediately. Imagine being in a budget meeting and being able to update and create what-if scenarios on the fly. Think about how quickly any decision can be made if that data that supports your assumptions is updated in real time, where everyone can see the results immediately. The collaborative nature of the tool allows you to engage with the right people, the right data, at the right time. I like to add a 5th item to this to mention its affordability. You get world-class planning functionality software that is priced 50% lower than most competitors. If you think about how much time is spent on budgeting and planning, this will pay for itself. Not having to be concerned with errors that are inherent with your Excel, for example, or being approached by the CEO or board about making small changes in assumptions revolutionizes the financial planning and analysis process. When we talk about the connection between Sage Intacct Planning and Sage Intacct, we have what we call the bidirectional integration, meaning information flows either from Sage Intacct Planning into the Sage Intacct core or vice versa. It's important to note that the integration is initiated through Sage Intacct Planning in either case. I'll show you how that works when we go into the demo. Imagine, if you will, creating a budget from scratch where we use the data from a given period that is in your Sage Intacct core financials, take that data and make changes to it, share it with other key stakeholders, and quickly and easily have a budget. As you can see on the slide, whatever information that is in your core financial general ledger, you'll have the opportunity to enter budgets on those dimensions. Keep in mind that if there are accounts or in Sage Intacct that are not in Sage Intacct Planning, you will automatically be prompted during the import process to map those new items into Sage Intacct Planning. The export function works similarly to the import. You'll see that one can create a new budget with all the accounts and dimensions mapped appropriately. You also have the option of mapping any new dimensions that don't exist in your Sage Intacct core. For example, if you want a budget on a line item that doesn't exist in Sage Intacct core, just like in the import function, you'll automatically be prompted to map those during the export process. This planning tool stands out by including a crucial element, and that is this financial planning and analysis. When I was a CFO and using Excel to manage my budgets, we typically spent 2 to 3 months on creating a budget for the following fiscal year. Once that budget was approved, we spent the remainder of the year just looking at budget to actual analysis. With this added FP&A element, we're providing the finance team with tools that can help with strategic planning, forecasting, and analysis. It serves as a link between the organization's overall strategy, its financial resources, and its operational execution. Okay. The financial planning and analysis tool improves visibility by helping your organization understand critical financial issues and opportunities. It helps you respond to market and organizational changes and influence and inform the senior leaders or the department heads or any other key stakeholder by giving them a better understanding of how financing and resources are being utilized. It'll allow you to drive change throughout the organization. Sage Intacct Planning is the complete planning solution for your organization's success. I'm not going to go to line by line on this slide. I wanted to include it just to give you a summary of the benefits. You can see here, I believe the benefits that stand out to me are really the advanced modeling, the what-if scenario modeling, and the rolling forecasts. And we'll go over all of that in the demo in just a moment. Okay, with that, I am going to let this go. And now I will take you through the demo and tell you a little bit about what I've just been talking about. So right now, I am in the Sage Intacct Planning tool. And again, it is a cloud-based, so you will be able to access it through any web browser. And once you're in here, and I am logged in, and I'll show you a couple of things before we get started to go into some details. I have the opportunity to have multiple budgets where I can see all of my budgets here. You can have as many as you wish. Going further to the right, you'll see some items here, dashboard, sheets, inputs, and actuals, and we'll go over some of this stuff. But really from here, I want to show you the dashboard because we have the opportunity here to show you, for example, that all these items that you see here, these are filters that will allow you to really limit the information that you want to look at that's important to you, okay? So I can see here that these filters, for example, if I want to look at working budget, I can see a forecast scenario. I can also see my budget by itself, or I can see budget versus actual. I can limit the information by choosing a specific department. You can see that, or the locations. And remember, and keep this in mind that what I have set up here is coming from the Sage Intacct Core financials. So whatever dimensions that are available in your Sage Intacct Core will translate here, and you'll be able to see them as titles that represent those particular dimensions. Okay, and you'll be able to limit that information for whatever department that you're looking for, or if you're interested in a specific location, you can do that too. And each time you do that, the dashboard will update. Okay, so now the next thing here is I want to show you how easy it is to just create a new budget. Now, it only takes a few minutes. We're not going to create one from scratch, but I just want to show you, once I click on creating a new budget, I have the opportunity of either using Sage Intacct data. I can also upload a file that exists from my, a file that I've saved, for example, or I can upload an Excel document, okay? In either case, all of that is available for you to do. And there'll be a wizard that walks you through those items, okay? And same thing with going the other way around. If you, at any point, once you start working with Sage Intacct Planning and you want to bring in your actuals, if you're already working on your budget, it's so simple to create by just clicking on this button here. I have the opportunity, I'll go ahead and just log in. Password. And here you have the opportunity again to either import actuals from Sage Intacct, export my budget into Sage Intacct, or in this case, there's a new functionality that imports your statistical data from Sage Intacct. Okay. In either case, just like I mentioned, is that you're able to do this, and it's initiated from the Sage Intacct Planning tool. And I'm not going to hit next now, but once you hit next, there'll be an opportunity to go through a wizard that will walk you through the process. Okay. Once we're in here, and I want to show you here now, in this case, I want to show you the connection because I've also have another tab here where I've opened up Sage Intacct Core. And just like bringing the budgets back, if you're familiar with this, I'm going to just go into the budgets area and my budget repository. And this is going to be where all of my budgets exist. Okay, so any budget that I bring in from Sage Intacct Planning will end up in this repository screen where then I can pull it into specific reports. Okay, and if I go into my dashboards and let's do analysis and planning, for example, now I can see my, in this case, rolling forecast budget. I can see my P&L information here. If I just click on this little edit button here, and I'll just make this larger, and when I go into my columns, I can now choose a particular budget that I want to show in my financial statements. And again, as soon as I click down, I see all of the budgets that are in my repository. Okay, so now once I choose that, I have that information here, and then have that to do budget to actual analysis. Another thing that I want to show you here to show you the connection is that let's say you are in Sage Intacct Core and you have a question about a specific item, you can simply click on an item and it'll drill down and it'll give you more information about it. And then I can potentially click even further. Notice that it's opening up another tab here for Sage Intacct Planning to take me to that particular number that is reflective of that financial statement that I just saw. Okay, so great way, it's connected from that perspective where you can see the information from one into the other. Okay, I am going to close this and I'll come back to this, going back to my Sage Intacct Planning. Okay. The next thing I want to show you here is the ease of sharing information. Now, this was critical to me in my role because, again, I used to use Excel for most of my budgeting purposes, and it was difficult to share because of version control and making sure people didn't change my formulas and things like that. So it made it very difficult. But with Sage Intacct Planning, there's an opportunity here to click on this little share button. And all you have to do is type in an email address of a person that you want to share it with. You can either give them view only privileges or modification privileges, either way. And then what I like about this even further is that it allows me to limit the information. So if I click on advanced, I can say, you know what, I've got some additional things that I may or may not want them to look at, but however, I know that I don't want them to see things like salaries. So I might say, you know what, I am going to exclude my salary and wages, and I can, exclude anything else that I want to in this screen, and then hit send, and then that person will get an email, and they will be limited to the information that I've shown them in this, or that I've allowed in this particular area. Okay. While I'm here, I'll also show you that throughout the software, you'll see little information icons that will give you opportunity to give you some more additional information about this particular function. So very easy to navigate. If you have any questions, sometimes you can get the answer by just reading and just hovering over these information icons throughout the software. Okay. All right. Another thing that I want to show you, because in this case, I'm sharing the whole budget and where I'm excluding a couple of things. I also want to show you that on this left-hand side, this is the budget tree, and I'm going to collapse it just so that you could see it from this level. And then and again, don't get hung up on the dimensions, because whatever dimensions you have in your Sage Intacct Core, they'll be reflective here. So whether it's your locations or departments, you'll see them here. This is the budget tree. I can expand each item if I wish. And for example, if I go down to my operations and then I'll scroll down a bit, these are my departments. And so just like we did with that sharing capability, if I want to now, I can just send my, the director of general and admin department. I can click on this and share just this particular portion of the budget. Notice up here, it's sharing just general and admin department. And again, even still, I can still exclude certain line items, but it works the same way. So now the person that's going to get this particular email, for, if you will, they'll only get information about this particular budget for this department, in this case, just general and admin. Okay, so it's easy, a great way to share information, great way for people to make their changes. I'll also mention something else later on about that sharing capability. that where you can give people rights to make some changes, but not affect the overall budget. Put it in a scenario where people can look at it, and then you can decide whether or not that's going to be part of the overall budget. Okay, so a great way to share information. Okay, also here in the excuse me, in the sheets area, there's a whole opportunity. This is where you're going to see all your reports. You've got your cash, your profit and loss, balance sheet, bookings, headcount, and we'll talk about models in a little bit. But again, just like we saw on the dashboard, so here's our financial statement information where we could limit. We've got those filters that we've seen already, where I can just filter on a particular location. I can do all locations. Again, these are going to be your dimensions. So whatever dimensions you have, if there are projects that you're managing, one of your dimensions might be projects. So you'll see that, and then you'll be able to filter that particular project. Okay, all depends on how you've set up your Sage Intacct core. Okay, and also you'll also have the opportunity to look at budget versus actual. So now I can see my actuals budget, my working budget, and any variances. Okay. Okay, so now in the inputs area, this is where I like to just say that this is a day in the life of the accountant, right? The person who's managing the budget, the information that they're going to be seeing. So now in the inputs, and I'm in the inputs area under main, and this is going to be where most of the changes are going to happen, or the values, if you will. And I'm just going to expand my general and admin just to give you some examples. And you can see here that now I've got, things that you're typically seeing in a budget, right? You've got your line item budgets. You've got these little codes here, 6200, 6210. This is your general ledger account number that came in from your Sage Intacct core. If I select any one of these, I can see that the information that's landing page changes depending on the item that you've done here. And so with this one in particular, I can see here that this is my office supplies line item, and I can either choose a different amount each month where I can put in the amount of every budget if I want, just type in the amounts, and you'll see as you type them in, it'll update that information. You can also use the same amount each month, or you could also use a growth percentage where you can start out with something and then just choose a percentage to grow. So again, this is another way of building your budget in a way where you can set certain items and forget about them, right? Have them set up in a way so that if things change, they'll change with you, and just make it that process easier, which is what I meant about not having to work on this just during budget season. You can make these changes as you go and keep having different versions of these budgets that are updated for forecasting purposes. All of that is available and easy to use, okay? As I scroll down here, you'll see information about the date range that you can choose. There's also this concept of the dimensions, where if you also want to allocate expenses, you can allocate them by those dimensions. Again, if you have additional dimensions that you want to track in Sage Intacct Planning that don't necessarily exist, let's say, for example, salaries and wages, you might not have the individual salary names in your Sage Intacct core on your general ledger, but all those numbers roll up to your salaries and wages cost line. Okay, so you'll have that opportunity to create those additional items that will roll up into the items that you wish. As I keep scrolling down, we also have the opportunity to do cash recognition. So this pertains to your cash flow. So in terms of cash flow analysis, if you're looking for an opportunity to look at what your cash is going to be, how much money are you going to get in a particular month, you have the opportunity to choose these percentages about when you're going to receive the money. So you can type in these percentages, and then this will be reflected on a cash forecast statement that is available in the sheets that we just saw a moment ago. Same thing with expense recognition. If you have some expenses that are going to be recognized on different months, you have that opportunity to choose the percentages and which month it's going to be recognized on. Okay, and then down here we have the opportunity to have a comments where it's a threaded comment. And so again, if you're sharing a budget with people and they're making changes to these items, they can come down to the bottom for each line item, plus press this little button and have the opportunity to type in support for their particular item. Okay. So very easy to manage and to share that information with other people. Okay. So now this landing page, just like I mentioned, this is just for a basic expense. Notice up here, there is a budget type and it's called expense, but we also have different types of expenses here. And if I just drop down this menu, you'll see items like professional services, per employee expense, per new employee, expenses from reserve or derived expense. And these are great ways, again, where you can set up these items that will move with you, that will increase the budget. Or like for example, if we chose something that was a per new employee expense, let's say you're gearing up to hire a whole bunch of people in the accounting department. Well, there are expenses that are associated with that startup, if you will. Maybe there's laptop expenses or home office expenses or whatever. You can create an expense type that is based on new employees. So every time that there's a new employee that's added to the budget, this expense will also get updated based on that information. So again, think about how easy that would be to have these things set up in a way that you don't have to think about them, right? They happen automatically because you've done the setup in the beginning, okay? Same thing with, I'm gonna use an example down here. I've got, let's say conferences. Now this is great. So I've used a budget type and I've used one that's called a derived expense. And the idea here is that maybe you have some expenses, whether it's legal or conferences, or maybe consulting expenses that are based on maybe revenue and items that you say, you know what, when my revenue or this expense is directly correlated with my something else, whether it's revenues or expenses or something else. But you have that opportunity here to say, okay, well, this conference and events expense is a derived expense, and it's derived from, in this case, I chose my location of SPC East, revenue, standard products, which is a revenue item. And then I got to choose the percentage. And then again, now this will take that item from the budget and multiply it by that percentage rate, and it'll give you my budget right down here. Okay. So again, what a nice tool that allows you to fill in these amounts based on other information. Okay. Same thing with, I'll show you in a moment, when we go into the model, there's another one where we can create when we're looking at models. But just think about that there's all these items here that allow you to make just your budgeting that much easier. If you're using just the akin to just having, let's say, whatever you're doing in your in Excel, for example, but we've got so many other tools that take it to the other level. Okay. All right. The next thing here is just showing you salaries. Again, that doesn't necessarily exist in your Sage Intacct Core, but you'll have all of the employees listed in your Sage Intacct planning tool. So them, and I can see there's information about the role, the base salary, what the benefits percentages, employment taxes, if there are any increases, higher dates. All these things are things that you can put in there. Also, if there's, I'm going to just expand this. You can see that the benefits, here are the benefits, here are the taxes. If I choose another employee, let's say this employee might have a sign-on bonus or a bonus information, you can do that too. You can set up what's called an advanced benefit that has a sign-on bonus, and again, automatically have these things calculated in the budget when you need it. Okay, and just like we saw earlier, you'll always have that opportunity to allocate by dimension, by percentage rates, whatever, as long as you put in those percentage rates, you can do by simply clicking this and adding the actual department and then adding the percent. Okay, so very easy to manage. I also just want to mention here that while we're looking at this budget, and so let's say there's only 4 employees here that we're seeing here because those are the only ones that are associated with admin. You can also, I love this tool here on the tables. You can see all of the employees in one area. It kind of gives you that Excel feel, if you will, where you can either add employees and you can make changes to them, and you'll see them in that format that you might be familiar with from an Excel standpoint. Okay, so very easy to manage. I'm also going to come back here just to show you that while all this is available through this tool here, like we just said, where you just select each one and make the changes, but you can also, there's this grid entry here on the upper right-hand area. If by simply clicking on this grid entry, I can now make changes to the particular items by just selecting them from here, make my changes. Okay, or if there's an item that is that has a that is derived, I can just simply click on it and it will open up that information to allow me to change it. Okay, so very easy to do. We've got different ways to manage the budgets. I think that whether you like looking at it from this view or from the other view, it's really up to you. All right, let's continue. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is from the modeling perspective, and this is, what I've shown you so far really is what I like to say, simple. Again, using that concept from that I mentioned. Let's go back to office supplies, where that expense type, right, is just an expense. But what sets Sage Intacct Planning apart is going to be this concept of doing these models. Okay, so what happens here is that now we have an opportunity to create a model. And I'm just going to give you a simple model. Let's say we've got, supply costs for, again, this is a very simple model where I'm just saying that my average supply cost might be a certain amount. And then I've got, client served or something, or whatever it is. I can choose to have this information either filled in via an input. And so what'll happen here is I can either type in the amount by changing this number, or in this case, because it's linked to the statistical accounts that are coming in from Sage Intacct Core. So again, if you're using statistical accounts, you can update this information. So if you're expecting, more clients, or you're expecting to do more work, you can update those in Sage Intacct Core and then have them come over when you bring over the actuals. And each one of these would get updated, because what it will do is it will calculate that amount based on the formula that you put in there. And in this case, the formula is, average supply cost times the client served. Okay, and then what's nice about that is that it'll also notice that it says linked here when I let it go, meaning that this particular program supplies line is connected to a budget line item on the budget, right? So it'll get updated as we update these statistical accounts based on our assumptions. Okay, so now for the general services industry, you might have another example, might be conferences. So let's say, again, our assumption might be that you've got airfare, we've got hotel costs, per diem costs, all of these things that go into the cost for a conference. And then down here, you've got the opportunity to have the input to say, okay, well, I want to input 3 people to go in March, 3 people to go in June. Depending on, again, what other conference. If it's a sales conference, you can type in the amount of people are going to see, and then have a formula down here that is linked to a line that's called conferences. And each one, again, has that formula that we just saw, where it would just multiply that those values and give you the cost. Okay, so very easy to do, to manage. Again, think about how easy it would be to manage these kinds of things when all of these drivers are already set up. Okay, commissions, another thing. Again, anything that you're doing in Excel, just like we just saw, we've got that formula option here, where if you're on this wrong example, let me come back to this one, where just like using a formula in Excel, you've got that opportunity to do an if formula, if you will. If you want to multiply commission rates and and you want to look at stuff, like, you can do that. You can create this formula based on that. You've got the tools here to do that. And then again, once that's set up, all you have to do is update the assumptions to change those values that will hit your budget. Okay, now this, again, so this, for me, I feel like, again, this is what, you can get really creative about how you use these models, because I feel like it does take This is no longer budgeting. This is really planning. And this modeling feature coupled with this what if scenarios that we're looking at here gives you the opportunity to make these changes. And so from here, let's say I can potentially just create a new scenario, and we'll just call it and once I create that scenario, what has happened here is that it has created a complete copy of my working budget and put it into this other area called scenario. And now when you share this information with other people, or you can make changes to it, whatever change you make, so if I go into my main and I decide that I want to change some information about a particular line item, dollars. I can also change lodging. Nope, I'll change this. 5,000. Okay. What'll happen here is that all of these changes will give me the opportunity to see how this affects it, but it only keeps it in this scenario area. And so now if I go back to my sheets and I go into, let's say, my updated model versus working budget, I can now see my scenario, my working budget, and I can see the variances. And I can see what this overall change is going to affect, what that's going to do to my overall financial statement. Okay, so think about how easy this could be. And I like to use this tool as well from, I mentioned earlier about this sharing feature, that when you want to share a budget with someone where they can go ahead and make changes, what we can do is you can create a scenario for that particular department, if you will. We'll use a department as an example, where having that scenario in there, making them go in there and make all the changes that they wish, and then the person who's responsible for the budget can actually come in and decide at any point, have these scenarios and say, for example, I want to merge that with the budget. Okay, so merging those changes affects those changes, and then that scenario disappears and gets merged in the actual budget. Okay, so it's a great way, again, to share information and have people make those changes, and again, see those notes, those comments, that threaded commentary that's available for people to see. All of those things are things that will help you manage your budget in a better way. Okay. All right. The last thing I want to show you is that how easy it is to just create a scenario where you're just doing a snapshot. I can come into my history and say that I want to create a forecast for the month of, let's say, we'll call it June. Yeah, June. And I can simply click on this, create a forecast, and June. And now when I want to, I can either go into this particular budget by just simply clicking on here to switch to this particular version, or I can go back to my sheets area, and instead of looking at my working budgets, I can see my forecasts, and now I can see, I can see all of the forecasts that I've created. Okay, in this case, my June one, I can see that. And now I can also see my forecast budget that is compared to, maybe my working budget. Okay, and again, I have that capability of filtering down to whatever department that is necessary. Okay, so very easy to manage from that perspective. Same thing with, if you want to look at balance sheet information, you've got that opportunity to see all those. Okay, I don't have any. I gotta go back to my. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so just information about how your balance sheet, your cash forecasting, all of those things are available. Bringing them back and forth into Sage Intacct Core makes it really easy to do, to manage that process going in and out. Okay. And all right, and so think about how easy it would be if you're sitting in a room and like you are there's so many, there are people who are, when you're using Excel and you have so many different versions of a budget, I laugh when I think about how I used to have to compile all the different worksheets in Excel, then have to name them operating budget, final, version 2, revision 6. That was a nightmare. This is a great benefit of having it all in one source of truth. And so I want to reiterate about, the importance of using Sage Intacct Planning. It's a no-brainer. The real-time collaboration with stakeholders, giving them the opportunity to take responsibility for how they're spending on their budgets, increasing the trust, providing that greater agility to respond to business market changes. It's revolutionary. Okay. All right. Well, I hope that I have, this was supposed to be a high-level demo, and I hope that I've enticed you enough to be more curious about this tool, and how it can help you, from not just the budgeting, but from a planning perspective. So please reach out to your partner with questions and next steps. Again, thank you for being here, and believe we got to your questions. If not, then please forward your questions to your partner if you have any later on, and we will be sure to get them to you. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. Hope you have a great day.